Hey everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Bar podcast, where we unravel the wild and often unspoken sides of our favorite movers and shakers. Now, I'm your host, Denisa Tova, and today we're diving into something that's actually a little different. It's both thrilling, a bit mind boggling. It is the world of AI in dating, sex, and romance. And guess what? Joining us today again is the ever so fabulous actress, writer, producer, and beacon of humor and realness. And that one I love. You will know her as the unforgettable Brandi Maxxxx from Parks and Rec and other shows. So, and she's definitely not a stranger to the ups and downs of dating. Mara, it's a delight to have you back.
Thanks for having me. Nice to see you.
Um, last time we were here, you shared some hilariously disastrous dating stories. And, we just touched up on how this sort of a provocative new world of AI and how spilling it into romantic lives is. And so I really want to dig a little deeper and really just explore with you, get your take on what do you think this phenomenon is?
Yeah, I think, well, it's very interesting. I think as a culture, we just myself, I've noticed, and my girlfriends, it used to be, especially my friends are a little bit older than me too. And, I want to try to say this as PC as possible, but it used to be a lot of dating. And now, again, I'm talking about, straight relationships for the most part because I don't want to step on anyone's toes, but just from my experience, it used to be guys, they want to try to get in your pants, so to speak. That would be kind of
Right.
like the
Yeah.
goal, alongside maybe wanting a relationship. But
Yeah.
now it seems that the dopamine hit of the match, the dopamine hit of one good first date is enough. Like even Bill Maher, just I think an episode or two ago was talking about how this generation under us are having much less sex because, and I think that dating apps and I think the easy access to porn, and now you have the virtual Oculus porn, which is so realistic. I think it's ruining the brain, particularly the male brain, who already are not as relationship minded as females. I think it's just really, I mean, it's the end of our species soon. I think because it's so crazy. It's an epidemic. It's so interesting.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
know what? And you could sort of shrug it off and be like, what are you talking about? And it is a reality. We're talking about something that many people are thinking about, but just afraid to say it. It has sort of penetrated, no pun intended, our lives, and it is seeping through like the day to day. So let's assume that AI is replacing the relationship. I mean, can AI really predict like the ever-changing emotions and even on a physical level, right? You're attracted to somebody today, and let's say AI makes this match. I'm sure matchmakers are playing with that idea, and they hook you up with somebody based on AI algorithm. And you meet with that person. Maybe initially, you spark the interest, but then doesn't it change? Doesn't the chemistry change?
Yeah, I mean, I've never had a relationship with AI in that way. So I can't speak to it from that perspective, but I will say that I do think a lot of someone, I hate to say just men, but one's needs can be met through, okay, you have a dog, okay, you can cuddle with your dog. Okay, you have
Yeah.
an AI virtual relationship, that part is taken care of. Okay, you have virtual porn. You can literally, you know, some of these things you can have sex with the most beautiful women in the world, and it's so realistic that now that need is sort of gone. So
Yeah.
where is that need for a human relationship when you already are not, quote unquote, as, like, technically, just scientifically, a woman's brain is more, you know, prone to wanting a relationship to bond in that way. And I think when you give someone whose maybe brain is not as prone all of these resources, why would they want a relationship? What is the incentive for them? unless they do, want to start a family or something one day, which as a guy, you have way more time, technically than maybe a woman would. And so I think there's a lot of, and I'm so careful. I don't want to step on anyone's toes because I know that all of these can be
I
different with
get it.
different relationships, different
Totally.
genders, and everything. But just in my experience, these are sort of my thoughts. But yeah, it's so interesting. It's
Yeah.
I,
And I'm just trying to visualize basically you said that you went on a few dates that were not very successful, and it was almost as if that person needed got more validation and more out of being on an app, and how many swipes they get, how many likes they get. Like there's this need to be fed that is coming from a different place that it used to.
oh yeah, I think dating apps for the most part have become validation apps. It's more like, am I hot? Am I hot? Like versus, oh, I want to match with this person. I want to get to know this person. I want to take this person on a date. It's I have so many matches where no one has said anything. And you can say, well, the woman can make the first move. Sometimes I will, but sometimes I do and the guy doesn't say anything back. So why did you match with me? Of
Mm.
course, I have matches where we talk, but then there's also
Yeah.
matches that just seem want to be pen pals forever. I'm like, are you going to ask me out in the next like year? It's so
Yeah.
frustrating. But I do think, even, and I can't speak, necessarily to other cities because I'm speaking more for LA. It's
Yeah.
really hard because at least in New York, you go outside, you're around people, you go in the subway, you're around a bunch of people. I feel like men still, when I visit at least New York or the South, do come up more than they do in LA because you can be so isolated in LA. You're in your car, you're, at home, so what I found is a guy may see you, he won't come up to you, but he'll try to find you on social media and slide in your DMs. So even like there's not that personal, it's just very interesting. It's just everything's shifted. And I do think dating apps have kind of ruined the male brain. Like that's my thesis on it all. But it's sort of a necessary evil because now everyone's on them. No one's coming up to people anymore. That muscle of like coming up to someone has sort of atrophied. So when a guy does come up to me, if I'm not interested, I'm like, I don't think we're a match, but please keep doing this because it's going to work on the right girl. Because I don't want them to stop because it's so rare. I just find it so interesting because yeah, yeah. Oh.
Wow. You know what you said, I like you referring to it as a muscle. You're right. It's altering, almost like your sort of, I don't want to say genetic makeup, maybe that's not the right word, but it's like we're morphing into something else. And I think if part of that is maybe the discomfort, like I am safe, right? When I put myself out there, especially if you've been programmed your entire life to sort of to try and protect yourself from feeling hurt, being hurt, right? Because this is we're accumulation
Mhm.
of our preferences. And then we're finding in the relationships that the minute you get to that comfortable phase where you go through that honeymoon period, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, he or she, they're not exactly saying and doing what I needed them to, because now I'm feeling a little uneasy. Oh, now I'm getting irritated. It's really not about them, it's about you carrying all the stuff with you, just looking for somebody else to fix you. So with these apps and the virtual dating, you don't have to worry about that. You're not really feeling any pain. But it sounds
Yeah.
really lonely and isolating.
It gives people such an illusion of choice, whereas,
Mm,
someone would
mm,
be like, okay, this is a attractive person. I met them. I'm going to try to get to know them. It's like, oh, well, there's 300 more of her, so there's not this sense of it's such an illusion, because that those 300 women, maybe 100 might be interested in you. Maybe 50 of those actually look like their pictures. Maybe 20 of those you'd actually have chemistry with. And maybe, five are actually viable. Like it's just so interesting. Like the whole, and I think, again, piggybacking on that idea of it's an illusion. I think that people, just like you said, when things start to not be perfect, that honeymoon period, you know, the romance movies are in a way, the fairy tales and the romance movies, as much as I love them, are an equivalent of porn. Like they're the female porn because they're not real. And I think people think, oh, well, it's not like the fairy tale anymore. That means it's over. But no, you still have to work on a relationship. And I feel like people just don't have the capacity. Not, I'm generalizing, I know some do, but a lot of people don't seem to
Right.
understand because they didn't have those role models growing up, or they just don't want to put in the work. Like it's not easy anymore, I'm on to the next thing, I want it to be easy. And that's just not how
Yeah.
relationships work. So I think people,
Yeah.
just like you said, they think a relationship is going to magically fix them, and when it doesn't, because they have to work on themselves, they're like, oh well, let me go find another illusion, something else to distract me from working on myself. And there's a lot of that in big cities, I'm
Well,
sure
you know what?
anywhere, but
That's why. Oh, no, I mean, you're experiencing it in LA, and, I moved to New York, from Colorado, and um, so I experienced the same thing. It was dreadful. It was work to go on a date because it's almost like you knew that everyone is going to put on their fake, self, and, if you try to go under the surface, it's like, "Whoa, okay." Now,
yeah,
going back to what you said, first movies. The romantic movies, romanticizing it, idealizing it. It's really not a reality. I love what you said. It's a form of a porn. Pornography being a
yeah.
fantasy world, not just physically and emotionally, because then it sets a certain standard. It actually is no different than when we look at social media and, when people are comparing themselves to something they believe is reality, whereas a lot of times it isn't, right? I mean, you could be sitting in somewhere in the basement and you make it look like $1 million loft, right? So we are living in this fantasy. So it'd be
Oh,
great
I
to make a
know
movie.
influencer couples that literally they're not together, but they make it look like they're together because they make money together, but they're not even so I mean, social media is the biggest illusion of all.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to
Yeah.
interrupt. Go on.
No, 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 no. I love that. I love that. No, it actually is. It totally is. And I was thinking movies, I mean, you're a writer, you're a producer. Something to think about is, would people actually watch it if you show them the ugly reality of the reality? It really, to me, when you find someone, and I had to learn this, it took me about a decade. It's really not finding the right person. Because when you put it in that context, it means I need to find someone who's going to match my messed up self. But if you work on
Mhm.
yourself and you find someone basically who is who complements you, not completes you, I don't believe in that, and they feel whole in themselves, to me that's a great relationship, when you can go through the seasons, the ups and downs, and still,
Totally.
experience love.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I look at my parents and, they're, I feel like they won the lottery in love because they FaceTime me every day. They're laughing at each other's jokes. They just genuinely love spending time with one another. And I feel like that's rare. People, just yeah, it's very interesting. And I think I'm so thankful for having them as role models, but at the same time, it set the bar so high because I'm like, it's hard to
Yeah.
find. It's really, it's not, it's not every day. And I think, again, the relationships that I have had, the moment things get tough, it's like, okay, I'm out. And I'm like, hold on, we're not going to work on this. And so, yeah, it's challenging. It's challenging for sure on all levels. Like, I mean, being in a relationship has its own challenges too. Obviously, there's
Oh
this
yeah.
obviously grass is greener, but no, the grass is greener where you water it kind of thing. But
Yeah.
it's being single is hard too.
You've had relationships, you've been on, several first dates, and then have your sort of, maybe not expectations, but your sort of non-negotiables, have they changed as a result of that? And what are your top non-negotiables about, the right person?
Yeah, I mean, I used to be, making those lists like deal breakers and then the list of what I want. And obviously there's universal deal breakers, like you're abusive, if you're mean, cruel to animals or people or wait staff or valet, that kind of stuff is no, I'm out. But I'd have like, okay, no DJs, no actors, no pro athletes, and it's just like, well, then I'm taking out half of the city. So I
No,
I've
no,
tried to take it
jeez.
more on a person to person basis and kind of go from there, because it's just you can kind of make a list long enough to rule out everybody, you know? Um yeah, but I do think, obviously kindness, confidence, there's a lot of attributes that I do care about. The problem is, I may fall into a bit of a category where, like I always joke with my friends, the worst stereotype of the East Coast is probably more my type than the worst stereotype of the West Coast. That's sort of like
Hmm.
machismo, alpha male, like finance, gold chain. I'm into that,
You are into that. Well,
unfortunately.
yeah, because your dream role is to play a mob wife, so that's consistent with
Love
what
an
you said.
Italian.
So okay. Well, you gotta move up here, girl.
So, but the problem with that obviously is that often comes with some, not, I'm generalizing, but some not great attributes, as well. So it's like, how do you find that sweet spot? Yeah. You want to be attracted to them, but you
Yeah.
also, you want them to be kind people and, somewhat emotionally available.
Yeah, well, that's interesting to someone. I guess it is about a balance for many. If we were just speaking women, um, I used to say somebody who obviously is also has ability to communicate, and it's almost like with the emergence of AI and the slim pickings, it's like, okay, as long as he's kind, he's nice, able to communicate, he works out, he's in a decent shape, he's attractive,
Yeah.
and then it goes on and on. But have you ever sat there on a date where it was an attractive guy, but there was just you couldn't communicate? It was just like painful trying to have a
Oh,
conversation.
so many. You know how many dates I've been on where all they can talk about is
Yeah.
protein shakes? And I'm like, you're so
Oh,
handsome.
jeez.
Just stop talking. Stop talking.
So, I mean,
Or
but what
talk. Or
happened?
they're silent.
So,
Oh, what
I
happened?
mean, did anything come out of it? I mean, was it at least like a one night stand? I mean, was it, or was it just like were they intimidated, or was it so bad?
I just think that's the hard thing about apps is, yes, your pictures are very attractive. You've written enough that I can maybe tell you can string a sentence together. But chemistry is scientific. Like, you can't even tell it through FaceTime, which I found interesting too. I've had some nice FaceTime conversations, and then we go on the date and I was like, "Oh no, if we met in person, we never would have matched." And that's what's
Oh,
unfortunate, is it's
really?
just a lot of trial and
Hmm.
error, and that's where I think people get exhausted, because I
Mhm.
probably said no to some guys that if I saw in real life, I would vibe with, and vice versa. I've said yes to some that I was like, "Oh, if we met in person, we never would have talked to one another. We just, yes, you're attractive,
Wow.
but I'm not attracted to you," and vice versa, right?
Mm.
So that's the hard thing,
Wow.
I think, is just that trial and error and the exhaustion of another, like, oh, what a waste of makeup.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, that takes a while. You're right. That's interesting, the virtual versus in person.
Yeah.
Yeah, because even then you can only put on so many filters. So maybe it softens maybe,
But
well,
it's
because all
not
of your senses get into
it,
overdrive, right? It's the scent, it's the closeness, someone's
it's
energy, and
all,
it's not
yes,
the
it's the
same.
energy. It's not the same, because
Yeah.
trust me, I've
Yeah.
been catfished multiple times, and that's a whole separate issue. But just talking about, like, it in person versus virtual, I always urge people, okay, yes, if you're going to FaceTime, make it just a quick, like, hey, do you look like your
Yeah.
pictures? Can you string a sentence together? Let's plan to meet in person. Because if you make all this expectation and have these long FaceTimes, and then you meet in person, you're going to be so disappointed if there isn't something there. And it's a 50-50 chance. Like, it's no one's fault. It's just science. It's there, or it's
Yeah.
not, you know? Um, But I found
That is
that
so
really
true.
interesting. I thought I'd be able to tell that by FaceTime, but you can't. It's so interesting.
This is a tough one. Have you like I remember I was on a date, this was a few years ago, and the feedback was that I was intimidating. I because I was back then even I mean, I like to work out. Back then I was even more into it. I used to compete. I think I share that with you. And so,
Yeah.
I was muscular, but never like huge. I mean, it was I competed in figure.
Oh, yeah,
Um
yeah.
and and I like to really have conversations about things that matter. But that's the
Yeah.
feedback that I received. So what have you received any feedback that was like, oh,
I've
okay.
received similar feedback. And then I've also feedback that they weren't sure that I liked them when I did.
Oh,
And I was like, oh, I thought it was so clear, but I guess I wasn't. I don't know. It's so interesting how people take in things versus what you think you're putting out. Um,
yeah.
I think, yeah, it's challenging because it's like I don't think I think also because of being an actor and you want people to like you want to get the role that there is a sense of I think people have a good time on a date with me for the most part. I think. And so they think sometimes that maybe I like them also more than I do. I was just being friendly. So I've gotten both, which I find crazy because it's
Mm.
very obviously opposite. Um, but it's interesting because the ones I actually do like think I'm not interested. And then the ones that I'm not interested in, but I want to be nice, think I am. So I'm like, oh, I can't win.
That's interesting as an actress, and then, you played a role, Brandi Maxxxx. I would imagine that, I mean, the guys would just be lining up, to wanna have a date with you. I mean, absolutely gorgeous
Oh,
and,
that's
great energy, and so it's, it is surprising, that they would not take advantage of that opportunity, and obviously not just because of what you look like and who you are. It's just really to get to know you. Um, but maybe there's an intimidation factor just because you being so outgoing and like right now we're being so open. I have no idea
yes,
what the feedback will be, and nor I care because I again I've always been like that, very direct, and I've learned that I say things that people are thinking about, but they're afraid to say it. And all of
yeah,
this comes from love and great intentions. And I see, because I'm in a divorce field sort of indirectly, and I see people trying to find somebody. And even here in New York, it's like whether you are in your 50s or you are in your 30s or you're in your 20s, it is challenging. It's like who can you trust? So then it becomes also an issue of safety. Like, am I getting catfished, right? Because all the
totally.
interaction has been online or virtually, and you were laughed last time, or I'm hearing where okay, we had a first date, now we're jumping into the sack, and I'm not interested in somebody. A friend of ours was saying that, who's in her 50s, and he's like, you know what, I really wanted to get to know this woman better, and she goes, no, let's go for it. They had sex, and now that's it. And he just sort of cycled through a few women, and he was interested in a follow-up, never got to it. So he's like, what's going on?
It's so interesting, like, and it's there's so many pieces to the puzzle too, right? Like, I have amazing friends, and I've tried playing matchmaker, and I've stopped because I'll have one amazing friend, and I'll have another amazing friend. I'm like, "Amazing, let's see if that works out," and then one of them gets weird with the other one, and I'm like, "You were just complaining about people doing this to you. How are you being weird?" Like, and so I've stopped playing matchmaker because it's just such an interesting thing too because people I think they say they want something and then when they actually get it they're like oh. And I think that has to do with
Yeah.
commitment, how they grew up, all sorts of stuff. But I think it also comes down to just working on yourself and actually knowing what you want because I think there is this epidemic of therapy speak now where people think oh
Yeah.
because I follow all these therapists online I've diagnosed myself, I know what I'm talking about, and you really don't, but they know how to use the language so it sounds like they've worked on themselves. So that's a whole thing too.
Hmm. That actually just gave me, you know what? We will definitely continue that. There's something there. Yeah, it's one of my pet peeves are there are many, many, many great motivational speakers out there. I get it, but there are many self-proclaimed gurus who spew out these headlines, sort of how to. I'm going to drop the F bomb here. It's just basically how to unfuck your mind. And, here's what you do, the top three things. And this is what you got. And so, by people, I think, giving themselves the self talk in the morning, looking in the mirror, I'm this, that is great, but it's only
Yeah.
part of it. You then have
Yeah.
to go out there. And when you are interacting with the world, people, environment, and you feeling yourself getting triggered, get back into that seat of consciousness and go, I'm noticing that I'm about to lose it, but I'm only noticing it. That doesn't mean I will lose it. Now, that's a real work every second. Or you sitting with a person, no, I'm not looking for that person to fix me. Something's coming up for me. That's really my shit, and I'm going to own it. That's the real
Yeah.
work, not, okay, yeah, I'm great. I'm beautiful. I'm smart. Okay, on the surface. All right, start there, but continue.
Yeah.
So you know what?
Yes.
We will definitely address that. That's so true. Yeah, that is great. Listen, it's been terrific to have you here, and I definitely want to continue this because this is really important. And yeah, so thank you so much for sharing part of yourself with us again.
Thank you for having me. Lovely to see you again.
And for all of you who would like to follow beautiful Mara, follow her adventures in acting and life, you can follow her on social media under Pop Gloss. And then don't forget to hit subscribe to our YouTube channel, Beyond the Bar Podcast, and follow us on all social media and to keep up with the great conversations. And until next time, stay inspired and stay curious.